Hello, and welcome to Retroscoping, a podcast tracing the evolution of feature animation. We are journeying through the films of the studio that started it all, Walt Disney Studios. This week, we're delving into the 9th feature film, Fun and Fancy Free. But first, a bit about us. I'm your host, Nathan.
And I'm Alexa.
Tell us, Alexa, why are we qualified to host this podcast?
Well, I think it's because Jiminy Cricket came to visit us very recently, so we have been chosen.
Have we?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see Jiminy.
Oh, you did. You did. Well, first he came to visit me one night after you had gone to bed, and scared the living stuffing out of me. And
Oh, was that the cricket I had to trap under glass?
yes.
Ah.
So, hey, let me tell the story.
Okay.
Let me tell the story.
Your story. You tell.
So in the dead of night, Jiminy Cricket appeared unto me, just as he does to Scrooge in A Mickey's Christmas Carol. However, he did not come to show me Christmases past or present. It was a few nights after we watched Fun and Fancy Free where we were like, oh my gosh, Jiminy Cricket's back. How cool. We didn't know Jiminy Cricket was in fact back. And he was loose in our house. So, 2 a.m. in the morning, I'm very bad at going to bed. And as I'm getting ready to turn off the lights, there's a little speck on the ground. I was like, oh, that's weird. So I bend down to pick it up, and it jumps into my face. It was not great. So I spent the next hour running around after the cricket, trying to catch it. Did not work, and it disappeared while I wasn't looking. So I was lost in the house for a few more nights. Nathan didn't believe me. He did not believe that I had seen Jiminy Cricket. And then I found him again in the bathroom. And then Nathan helped trap Jiminy and release him back into the wild. But
I can assure you, listeners, Jiminy only lost one of his legs in this process.
Oh, you're so mean. Did not.
I would like to use this as an excellent segue to talk about why Jiminy Cricket is the worst conscience. This film, which is a 1947 package film containing 2 separate shorts from Walt Disney Studios, strung together by a Jiminy Cricket appearance and an excruciatingly long ventriloquy segment, opens with Jiminy Cricket sailing his way through a little planter and singing a song that apparently was cut from Pinocchio, I'm a Happy-Go-Lucky Fellow, and cheerfully advocating, absolutely disregarding all of the problems and cares of the world. Which is a terrible attitude for a conscience to have.
However, all of the things that he was saying about, like the world just kind of catching on fire and going to pieces, all of those actually worked for today. Like, they were surprisingly relevant for something that was put out in the 40s.
Yeah, he at one point sees some newspaper headlines, and it's the usual, everything is on fire, the world is ending, everything is terrible, and that's actually the thing about the world is ending headlines, is they're basically always relevant in human history, and every era likes to think, oh no, this time, it's really ending.
We're it.
Mm-hmm. So, that was a nice context reminder as we head into 2020. Takes a sip of alcohol.
Very nice. Well, Fun and Fancy Free was released September 27th of 1947. We don't have numbers for the budget. They just don't appear to be on the internet. But when it had finished, the film had grossed $3,165,000 worldwide. Keeping in mind the movies around it are spending about $1.5 million, so definitely we can say it probably made money.
I definitely don't think this movie cost $3.5 million.
No, yeah, well, definitely not. The interesting thing about it, and I think one of the reasons we probably don't have good numbers on the budget, is that both of the shorts in this package film, both Bongo and Mickey and the Beanstalk, were originally both supposed to be their own full animated feature films. But then they ended up having to be cut for budget reasons and time reasons.
And also the U.S. military taking over the Disney studios.
Yeah. Well, Pearl Harbor happens December 7th of 1941. And the day after, the United States military takes control of Disney Studios and commissions Walt Disney to produce instructional and war propaganda films. So Disney had to shelve all of his in-progress productions like Bongo and Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan and work on those for a while. And as we know, Disney was also struggling financially in this era, as we talked about in Saludos Amigos and The Three Caballeros. So he had to wait to do a single narrative feature film until he had made enough money doing these package films, which will not happen until later. We have at least 2 more to go after today's.
If you're just chiming in now because for some reason Fun and Fancy Free is your favorite Disney film, it's not. We are currently in an era that's called the package film era. About 6 films that were collections of shorts rather than feature-length animated features, which were a result of a variety of budget problems at Disney Studios as they tried to take a cheaper approach to making movies so that they could eventually save up enough to make a proper Disney animated feature, which we will thankfully return to with Cinderella very soon.
Very soon. I'm actually excited about the Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
Did you know that Mickey and the Beanstalk, one of the films in this film, was originally planned to be paired with The Wind in the Willows short from Ichabod and Mr. Toad? And its working title was really just a real seller. 2 Fabulous Characters.
What?
That was the title they were working on it under. 2 Fabulous Characters.
That's not a title.
It was a working title. Probably would have changed.
I mean, I just want to make the joke that we made in the Bambi episode of like 2 Fabulous, 2 Furious. Would have been a better title.
It actually would be an excellent title for a movie about, the Wind in the Willows and Mickey and the Beanstalk, wouldn't it?
I mean, not about that specifically, but like, it's still a better title. Yeah. Well, Mickey and the Beanstalk was originally called The Legend of Happy Valley. I personally I thought I loved Mickey and the Beanstalk.
We'll get to that.
We will. But first, let's talk about the original source material for Bongo. Because what in the world is a bongo?
So this film, Fun and Fancy Free, is 2 shorts, Bongo the Bear and Mickey and the Beanstalk. We open with Jiminy Cricket singing a happy little song, talking about ignoring the care of the world, and stumbling upon 2 kind of terrifying stuffed animals, a bear with his mouth tragically sewn shut, and a doll, and a record player. So he puts on the record of Dinah Shore's reading of Bongo, which is, I guess, apparently one of the ways they like to package these films together, because in Three Caballeros, Donald puts on a film reel that walks us through the different options. In this case, it's a record.
I would just like to say that it's really refreshing to have a woman narrator for once.
Well, that's true.
Like 99% of the time, it's always a male narrator, and so it was actually really lovely to have a woman's voice. I'm sad that the things that she had to narrate were not super great.
One of the pervasive problems, I feel like, in a lot of these feature shorts that we've been watching is that they are incredibly narration heavy rather than having dialogue in the films, or just trusting the audience to follow the animation and the music and the gags. They are heavily over-narrated.
Well, obviously dialogue would cost too much. You'd have to hire other actors.
Yep. So this is all Dinah Shore all the time. So tell us about the original source material for Bongo.
Well, it's based on a story called Little Bear Bongo, written by Sinclair Lewis for Cosmopolitan magazine in 1930. And wow, has that magazine changed? I feel like I'm supposed to know who Sinclair Lewis is based on the Wikipedia articles.
He is one of the great American writers that I have never read.
I feel like our American education system must be failing us for us to never have had to read even one of his short stories. And he wrote a lot of short stories.
Well, our American education system has a really hard time catching up to the 20th century when it comes to history and literature. We go from, the American Revolution through the Civil War, and then we skip ahead to World War II. So a lot of the first half of the 20th century is very underrepresented in the American education system.
I don't know that we needed to focus so much on the early stuff anymore. Anyway, but he is the first writer from the U.S. to receive the Nobel Prize for Literature, also in 1930. That seems fancy. It's very fancy.
I'm sure he's a great writer. Very important. Influenced American literature in important ways. We are all in debt to Sinclair Lewis. I am just a bad student of American literature.
I mean, listen, if you're not going to be slightly impressed, none of us are going to be slightly impressed. You're the brains of this operation. If this doesn't mean anything to you, then good golly.
That's great. Yeah, who can say no to a Nobel Prize?
I don't think you can refuse a Nobel Prize. Are you allowed to do that?
I think Bob Dylan tried.
Oh. Well, anyway, Sinclair Lewis, his works were known for their critical views of American capitalism and materialism in between the world wars, which sounds very nice.
I don't think this film does a lot to communicate the deep ideas of Sinclair Lewis's work.
No, I'm also not sure that the short that they made retains any of that either.
No.
In the original story, Bongo accidentally kind of falls out of the circus and into the Rocky Mountains, where he finds a bunch of wild bears who shun him because he's kind of soft and pacifistic and too civilized for their bearness. And there is a bear that he falls in love with, but she decides to pick a violent bear to be her mate instead of him, and so Bongo goes west, apparently. He could have joined Feifel. But he travels west until another circus welcomes him in, and he starts performing for them and lives out the rest of his days in captivity with another circus bear as his mate.
Yes, so it sounds like this original Sinclair Lewis short story, which I ought to have read as the brains of the operation, is making a critical point about the American heartland and toxic masculinity and violence and so on and so forth. The film that Disney has actually made is a wholehearted embrace of the American wilderness and apparently charmingly violent love rituals.
No, not charmingly violent. It is...
We should probably just talk about what this film is, because I don't think any of our listeners really know it terribly well. So, Bongo the bear is a circus bear. He's
really good at what he does. He's, in fact, so talented that he is the breadwinner of the circus. He brings in all of the money, and, like, he basically can do, rocket science and brain surgery, like, at the same time.
He can juggle a bunch of things and then fit them back into his tiny little fez on the top of his head. He can jump from great heights and land on a sponge of water.
Yes, he's incredibly talented.
Mm-hmm. But, alas, the minute he gets on stage, he is chained up and treated horribly. So he decides he wants to escape the circus life. Turns out that's very easy because the circus train doesn't lock its doors very well. So he escapes into the American wilderness, which, I should say, the American wilderness, the Rocky Mountains, look gorgeous in this film. Let it be said that the scenic painters in Bongo did their work very well. I found myself thinking, I gotta go drive through the Rockies.
Have fun.
But this film actually, I think, really better captures the feeling that Alexa has about camping.
It's terrible all the time.
Because Bongo arrives in an idyllic wilderness scene, breathes the fresh air, enjoys the thought of being a bear of the wild, finally settles down to sleep for the night. And it turns out that the peaceful bliss of nature is a lie.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it's alive.
That too.
Like Jell-O, like, it's alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fear it. Mm-hmm. Run from it, which is precisely what he does. I
feel like this film has a moment, like, specifically crafted for you. Even butterflies in this film are terrifying.
Disgusting. I hate them.
We get to see one unwrap its cocoon and reveal itself to just be a worm with wings.
I forgot about that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Thank you. None for me, please.
But just as Bongo's beginning to regret his time, his choice to go out into the wilderness, he meets a lovely young lady bear.
Lulu Bell. or something.
Lulabelle.
Lulu Bell.
Lulu Bell.
Not Lula. Lulu. Lulu Bell.
They fall immediately in love, and in the best sequence of the film, have a really odd little daydream love sequence.
The best part of the whole film, though.
Where two Cupid bears, which surprisingly do not look like Disney characters.
No, but they were also my favorite part.
They have more of a like newspaper cartoon style, like you might think of with Calvin and Hobbes, where it's just this big blank space where their eyes ought to be, and there's a little tiny dot in the middle, and their eyebrows are just way up at the top of their head. And it's a very particular look that works well, but looks kind of out of place in a Disney film.
Yeah, they have those little pinprick eyes.
Yeah.
And really, really big bulbous noses. So yes, they don't fit the Disney house style that I think we're used to seeing. They look like nothing else.
Yeah, that's cool. And they act as sort of Hollywood stage assistants for their like magical dream love sequence in the clouds, like flying in industrial amounts of flowers and hearts and snow, and getting a crane to move clouds around and things like that. It's actually a very well constructed, entertaining little sequence.
They're not Cupids, they're production assistants.
That's pretty much the case, yeah.
Yeah.
And if Bongo ended there, it'd be a very, very lovely piece.
But we're not done yet.
Instead, we're about to learn about bear mating rituals.
And domestic violence awareness.
Awareness that it happens, and in this film is totally fine.
Yeah, so the rest of this film was really hard personally for me to swallow because I react very, very negatively. I think as we should, but I react very negatively to making light of domestic violence. I don't like it when people joke about it. It's not funny. It's very real, and just because you haven't experienced it does not mean that you can make jokes about it. And like, it's one of those things that's never funny to me.
The basic conceit is that apparently for bears, the way they say they love you is by slapping you.
Yeah, which is supposed to be this hilarious misunderstanding, because after they've had this wonderful love sequence of how much they love each other, Bongo is surprised and dismayed when Lulabelle slaps him in the face. And so he goes wandering back into the forest to nurse his broken heart.
Meanwhile,
and somehow she accidentally... Well, she tries to slap him again, but she misses.
And accidentally slaps a giant brute named Lumpjaw.
Lumpjaw, because we good at names. We so good at names.
I do enjoy the way Lumpjaw just kind of like mows through the forest at a plodding pace, and all the trees just kind of like break down before him.
You know, it's actually interesting now that I think about it. In the original Sinclair Lewis, they call the she-bear Silver Ear. And so then when the brutish bear Lumpjaw, like, it makes sense that they're just like, oh, let me give an adjective and a characteristic, and that will be your name. Mm-hmm. But then Disney changes her name to Lulabelle, and it all kind of falls away. So you're like, oh, well, there's a Bongo, there's a Lulabelle, and then there's a Lumpjaw? That doesn't make sense.
So, you know, eventually Bongo and Lumpjaw have to fight it out for the love of Lulabelle.
Do they really? Well, no, he goes away, and he's nursing his broken heart, and then happens to watch the mating dance ritual where they all slap each other, and he finally, after like several rounds of this, understands, oh, she slapped me because she loves me, which is not a lesson you should teach anyone.
Nope, not a good takeaway. Not a good takeaway, children.
Mm-mm.
Do not learn anything from this film.
Or adults.
The only thing you should learn from this film is that butterflies are secretly terrifying.
Precisely. They're just moths. They're just moths that have tricked you.
So, after Bongo discovers the secrets of the bear mating rituals, he goes back to confront Lumpjaw. There's an extended fight sequence. It's so long.
Here's the thing. We've just established that in this culture, as much as I don't like it, that essentially hurting someone says that you love them. If they then get into a brawl between two male bears, should that not just be like the ultimate show of affection? Should they not end up together? I ask you, internet, podcast listeners, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't check out.
There you go. Disney's earliest LGBT representation.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Actually, it just shouldn't. It should go back in the box it came out of.
I wonder what the Disney Plus warning on this says. I didn't pay attention.
They don't... Well, it has nothing to do with this. It is definitely not anything about the depiction of violence.
So, anyway, Lumpjaw eventually falls off a waterfall, and Bongo is saved by his
he lives. He lives. Hang on. He lives. He goes down river and is washed away forever, but he's fine. He's fine. Over there. He's just over there now.
Yes. Bongo and Lumpjaw fall down a waterfall together, and
Bongo's just good at everything. Oh, but here's the other thing. Is like, if Bongo was good at everything, why is he not smart enough to have figured this out sooner?
Bongo's talents come and go at plot convenience. When he first arrives in the forest, you'd be like, well, this is an incredibly talented circus bear. He's probably very graceful. He's just clumsy as all get out. Cannot climb trees.
Oh, one of the things they established at the beginning that he's super good at is, like, he could take on, like, 10 top wrestling champions or something like that. And then all of a sudden, when he has to fight Lumpjaw, he's really bad at fighting. You're like, well, wait a second. That doesn't make sense either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to wait until he gets a good, like, Donald mad streak going to really do any difference in the fight.
You know, if there's anything I have learned from martial arts movies, I feel like it's that, no, getting mad does not help you fight better. You have to, like, be more transcendent than that.
I think that's the Eastern way of thinking about things. The American way of thinking about things is that, well, the angrier you get, the stronger you are.
Incorrect.
So the film ends with a, cute little image of they've climbed the trees and the trees bend into a heart shape in front of the moon, and they press the little noses together, which also forms a little heart, and then we're finally done with 40 minutes of Bongo.
Thank goodness. I just checked Disney Plus, and there is no warning at the beginning.
Nothing in this film that you need to be concerned about.
It's in fact rated G.
Overall, this is just kind of...
lackluster.
Boring.
There's
a few of the gags visually are mostly stock gags. It's things like peeling apart a waterfall like it's a curtain, or, two bears disappear behind a tree and then one comes out one end as the butt and the other one comes out the other end as the head, and ha ha ha. It's just, there's not a lot of great visual moments or gags. I did enjoy, in terms of visual moments, the love dream sequence. Yeah, is fun. The way that the circus deploys out of a train, like it's just exploding out from the train, is actually very well rendered, and then it sucks it back in as they zip away from the scene. That's it. That's all that it does.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to recognize that I think I'm just terribly colored by my disappointment with this film making light of domestic violence, and so it was very hard to enjoy anything after that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't feel like I'm judging it based on, like, my enjoyment of the gags or anything anymore. I feel like, yeah, I just really can't get past that.
Yeah, the whole premise is just wrong-footed from the start.
Which, unfortunately, put me in a really bad mood to watch the second short.
Well, that was the first of two things that put you in a very bad mood.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing. I grew up watching Mickey and the Beanstalk. I love it. I think it's a really cute and fun way to spend 30 minutes. But the version that I watched was one of their home video releases, and so it was framed with Ludwig von Drake and a little bug named Herman telling the story in von Drake's library or something like that. And it was always, like, very fun and adorable, and there were some great jokes, and of course, who doesn't love a good Ludwig von Drake? And so that's what I was expecting to get. And I was really wondering how in the world we were going to transition from Jiminy Cricket hopping around someone's live-action house to Ludwig von Drake. I was extremely disappointed to find out that that is not the framing device used in this movie.
Nope.
Jiminy Cricket unfolds an invitation that had been written to the little girl, Luana Patton, saying, hey, come to the house across the way. You've been specially invited by Edgar Bergen and... oh, shoot.
Charlie and Mortimer.
Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer Snurd. So Jiminy hops out the window and over to the house across the way. And you find out that there is this precious little 7 or 8-year-old girl all alone in a house with technically 3 men.
Technically, sort of.
Or, I mean, does it sound better to say a 8-year-old girl alone in a house with a man and his 2 puppets? Like, that doesn't make it better.
No, that makes it worse.
I was extremely triggered by all of this. Just, where are her parents? Who would allow her to be here? This is not safe. This is not okay. This is not good.
This was one of those moments for me where you realize certain elements of pop culture from previous eras have stayed with us, and we remember them, and we look back on them with recognition. Other huge pop culture successes of previous eras are entirely lost to us. So, Jiminy hops over to the house where big celebrity comedian and host Edgar Bergen is hanging out with his hilariously famous puppets, Charlie and Mortimer. And I thought, who are these people? What is going on? Why are these people in a Disney movie? Oh God, they're doing ventriloquy. Oh no, stop it. Make it stop. Make it stop. But at the time, this must have been a very exciting get for Disney. It was put in specifically to draw in audiences to the film. Oh, Edgar Bergen's in it? I love Edgar Bergen.
I mean, one of the jokes that they make, though, is that, like, he's not the famous one. Charlie and Mortimer are the famous ones. And they're like, why is Edgar Bergen here? Who's an Edgar Bergen?
To my one listener who
Hi,
also
Mom.
listens to Joe Henry, there's a classic Joe Henry song called Edgar Bergen, which includes the line, "Who's Edgar Bergen? Don't start with me." And I've always wondered, who in fact is Edgar Bergen? Now I know.
Well, if you did want to know, he is an actor, comedian, and radio performer, best known for his proficiency in ventriloquism, as we found out over the course of 30 minutes. What you might not know is that he also had a cartoon strip
I did not know that.
based around his characters, Charlie and Mortimer.
Charlie is essentially the cynical sophisticate, and Mortimer is the dumb sweetheart.
You may also know Edgar Bergen from his cameo in The Muppet Movie in 1979, which,
I have seen that movie a couple times. I do not remember his cameo.
well, that was his last public appearance because he did die shortly after that.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, well, now you feel bad for Edgar Bergen.
I mean, probably assumed he was dead because, this was a very long time ago.
Yeah, well, that's an Edgar Bergen.
I mean, I'm sure he was probably an okay person, but puppets and ventriloquism do not work for me. I don't think they work for any of us these days.
I mean, I wouldn't be too quick to say that. Jeff Dunham has done very well in his career. I enjoy Jeff Dunham. What is a Jeff Dunham?
Who's Jeff Dunham?
He has Peanut and Ahmed the Dead Terrorist. And have you not watched Jeff Dunham?
No.
Well, that's what we might have to do immediately after this. This was like, I don't know that he was super big when I was in college, but I was kind of getting the hand-me-downs of people slightly older than me for whom he had been very, very big and hilarious. Anyway, sorry, we're getting very off topic.
This tangent is unrelated to Fun and Fancy Free.
I'm just saying, don't get down on ventriloquy.
So, anyway, Jiminy Cricket crashes this super weird party and then proceeds to just kind of disappear from the film.
That's true.
And instead, we have Edgar Bergen beginning to narrate the tale of Mickey and the Beanstalk. Alexa's confusion is apparently very understandable because this short, Mickey and the Beanstalk, has been hosted by a lot of people over the years in various iterations.
Yeah, so they did actually repackage it in a whole bunch of different ways. They never re-released Fun and Fancy Free, but they did use both Bongo and Mickey and the Beanstalk in a bunch of different contexts. So this appeared, I think, on one of Disney's programs on television. And they also have a version hosted by
Sterling Holloway of Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Has narrated everything in Disney's catalog at some point or another.
He's so good at it.
And, of course, they also have Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop.
From Lamb Chop's Play Along. It's amazing. I want to see that version, actually.
It would be interesting, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think in all those different versions, the fun part that they kind of have to work with is at the end, Willy the giant comes in and lifts the roof of the house off and peeks inside and is like, "Have you seen that darn Mickey Mouse?" And then someone inside faints because they've been saying that, giants aren't real. They're a figment of your imagination. And so I finally understood, though, why in my Ludwig von Drake version, when he puts the roof back on, he goes wandering like through Hollywood and picks up a big brown derby hat and just wanders away through Los Angeles, because the original Fun and Fancy Free was set in a house in the Hollywood Hills.
One of the other versions also has him picking up the roof and it being Walt Disney in one of Disney's studios, where Hollywood also makes sense. It does not make any sense when it comes to Ludwig von Drake.
Well, I mean, what I would now like to believe is that Jiminy Cricket and Ludwig von Drake, like, they all just live in Los Angeles, obviously, because that's where their studio is.
Stars, yeah.
Yes, they're movie stars. Mm-hmm. They all live here. Mm-hmm. Makes sense to me.
So, Mickey and the Beanstalk is, I'm sure you can imagine, is just Jack and the Beanstalk with Mickey, Donald, and Goofy added in, and a whole extra mythology kind of layered in there.
But it's extra heartbreaking when you realize that the peasants who can't get enough to eat are your beloved Mickey, Donald, and Goofy.
They've never looked worse, man. They made them very, very haggard.
Yes.
Aww.
They're so sad.
It is a pretty devastating famine that this film begins with. In a beautifully illustrated image, Mickey is slicing their single loaf of bread as thinly as possible to create these little tiny translucent sheets of bread which he can wrap around the tiniest sliver of a bean and feed to his friends.
I do actually really love that sequence, though, just being able to translucently see through the bread and some of the things they do with that are very great. Donald has his crazy freak out moment, which for once is not motivated by anger, but rather by hunger, which is a new emotion for him, I feel like.
Donald normally gets angry. In this one case, he gets hangry. Or maybe he's always hangry. Maybe that's his problem. Maybe Donald just needs to snack.
He just needs a snack. Aww.
There's a great little visual image during that sequence where Donald's bib, the tie on the back of it, kind of curls up behind his head into little devil horns.
Oh,
that's the kind of visual creativity I come to Disney for. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so in this version, there is a magical harp who sings over all of Happy Valley and makes it happy. And therefore plants grow, and food is plentiful. So when she's snatched away by the giant, obviously everything turns to dust pretty immediately.
That is how nature works.
Obviously. So in previous versions, from what I understand from my reading, there was a version where Mickey actually takes their cow to the market and gets conned by Honest John and Gideon from Pinocchio.
This would have been a whole Pinocchio reunion movie. Cleo's also in it, in the opening sequence with Jiminy.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there's a lot of Pinocchio bits. I guess that would have made sense altogether. And then there was also another version where he gifted his cow to Queen Minnie, who then bestows upon him some beans in return. But all of that was either cut or changed.
Need to keep it short. So, anyway, somehow Mickey picks up some magic beans in exchange for the cow, which makes his friends angry because they were gonna
eat the cow, which is a lot bigger than 3 beans. He's like, but they're magic beans. Mm-hmm. Mickey! Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, in their little kerfluffle, Mickey loses his grasp on the beans and they go down a hole.
But that night, they grow into an amazing beanstalk. This is the highlight of the whole film for me because A, the narrator stops talking.
You're so mean.
And B, it's just beautifully animated with this wonderful sequencing of music. Like, it's this perfect combination of dance and choreography and jokes and time lapse, and it's just the way the vine grows and carries their house up into the sky and tears it apart and drops the different sleeping characters from vine to leaf. It's just so wonderfully choreographed.
Yeah, it's a really great orchestration. And especially just watching the vines grow, and you just have all these really pleasant curves as it snakes and slithers about, and there's all these beautiful coils. And
That's what it reminded me of, is like a snake charmer pulling the snake out of the basket, you know?
And the music going on in the background like really fits that as well. It's just, it's mesmerizing and pleasant all at the same time. Anyway, what I was going to say, because you were so excited that the narrator stopped talking, is that you really just wanted him to put a stalk in it. I'll be here all week.
All week, all month, all year, and forever. That's marriage, kids.
Forever. You're so glad you married me.
I am. I did it for the puns.
Should have put something about that in the marriage vows. Where were we?
So after the Beanstalk has carried the house up to the clouds where the giant lives.
They climb a table, and it is the most amazing feast of food. And quite frankly, I think as a kid, like, the thing that sounded the most awesome would have been to be shrunk and get to play around in giant versions of food. And there are some really, really great gags, I think, here.
Goofy goes swimming in Jell-O, which has always been a dream of mine.
Because he lost his hat. And no matter what he does, he can't get through the Jell-O to his hat. They just had so much fun orchestrating that. And there's, you know, the really great moment of them all trying to hide from the giant. And so, like, one of the things Donald Duck does is he crouches down amongst a bunch of little dumplings so that his butt looks like another one of the dumplings. And it's just so much fun.
Mickey goes to hide in a particularly holy slice of cheese.
Extremely holy cheese. Holy Jesus.
So we are introduced to Willy the Giant.
Willy the Giant.
Most of you probably will recognize from Mickey's Christmas Carol.
I mean, that's assuming you've seen Mickey's Christmas Carol, and if you haven't, you should, because it's the best Christmas Carol. I think it is better than a Muppet Christmas Carol.
It certainly has the advantage of being shorter.
Which is better.
On the other hand, it lacks Muppets.
Most things do.
Which is a problem with Hollywood today, that's all I'm saying.
Don't worry, they're working on a show just for you. To rectify your lack of Muppets.
Aren't they always?
Yeah, so if you've seen Mickey's Christmas Carol, you know that Willy the Giant makes a return as the ghost of Christmas present. And he comes with his feast.
He does. And since Jiminy Cricket is the ghost of Christmas past in that film, Fun and Fancy Free has 2/3 of the available ghosts of Christmas. It does not have Pete, the ghost of Christmas future. But that could have been easily remedied if they had simply thought about this film they were going to make 40 years later.
Well, here's the thing, is I've already been visited by Jiminy Cricket, the ghost of Christmas past, and I am now waiting for Willy the Giant to visit me as the ghost of Christmas present.
Oh, please save me some food if he does that.
Okay, I will do that.
But Willy has a lot more magic powers than you would expect a giant to have.
Fee, fi, fo, fum are apparently his magic words, and actually that's a really great use of this weird thing that's part of the original fairy tale, and giving it a reason, and it allows him to turn into anything he can imagine.
And he can fly, apparently. Just a handy skill for a giant to have.
Well, can he fly?
That's one of the things he does, is he's jumping around, showing off his powers.
But doesn't he have to turn into something? Because then he should have chased them by flying, rather than running after them. Anyway, he's great. A great little song about fee, fi, fo, fum. And he accidentally discovers Mickey Mouse, and he's displeased that someone has broken into his home. But Mickey outsmarts him by talking about, you know, his lifeline on his hands and telling his fortune, and begins to almost make friends with Willy, asking, "Oh my goodness, you're so magical and amazing. I bet you couldn't turn into a fly." And Willy almost takes the bait. Mm-hmm. But he thinks that what would really be far more impressive would be to turn into a big pink bunny. Mm-hmm. I think Willy's actually quite a sensitive character, so I'm...
He is. He's a sweetheart. I mean, the fact that he wants to kill our main characters is an impediment, but otherwise he's a sweetheart.
I mean, I think he would have been friends with Mickey had he not found Mickey, Donald, and Goofy trying to swat him with a fly swatter.
That does have a way of ruining a growing friendship, yes.
Yes. Don't swat your friends.
Don't slap them, don't swat them, just don't.
Yes. So he gathers them up and shoves them into a little trinket box with a lock. But they're apparently so tiny that Mickey does manage to get away, so he does not get locked in the box. And the harp sings Willy to sleep, and while she is crooning her sweet lullabies, she directs Mickey down into his pocket to get the key for the little trunk. He gets out his friends, they grab the harp, and as they are making their escape, Willy wakes up and chases them out the door, down the beanstalk.
They naturally chop down the beanstalk as he's climbing, and Willy falls presumably to his death, which very much upsets weird little puppet Mortimer.
And also, if you're watching my version, which is better, poor little Herman, the bug.
So the host, Edgar Bergen in this film, tries to reassure little Mortimer that, the giant isn't really dead. He's a fictional character.
So he can't die, because he was never real to begin with.
Which is an excellent commentary on Twitter fan culture. And...
Oh no. He will get eaten alive on Twitter.
At which point, Willy opens up the roof of the party, looking for Mickey, and is sent along his way.
It's a really magical moment, though. Like, I just fall all over myself for moments like that where animation interacts with live action, especially in, like, really meaningful and big ways like that. For him to lift the roof up and to actually interact with objects, like, oh, it's just so magical. Dang it. And then you watch Willy wander his way across Los Angeles. So again, I ask you, like, where is Willy? When is he going to visit me?
Next Christmas, presumably.
I have to wait between Christmases. All right. Well, did you know? Oh, wait, well. Guess who is playing Mickey Mouse?
Why, it's Walt Disney.
That's not a guess. It's really cool to think that, I mean, you hear, or you've been told, I'm sure, at some point in your life that Walt Disney voiced some of Mickey Mouse, but you never really think about it while you're watching or listening to it, that like, oh, that's Walt Disney. So, should you watch Fun and Fancy Free, or preferably get yourself a copy of Mickey and the Beanstalk, you can think to yourself, oh my gosh, that's Walt Disney.
It was apparently his last performance as Mickey Mouse.
It's one of his last versions of playing Mickey Mouse, at least regularly. After this, he stepped back from the role. He was just far too busy, and he handed it off to Jimmy McDonald, who was I think he was a sound or a Foley guy. But Walt Disney does do Mickey Mouse's voice in some of the Mickey Mouse Club. Or somewhere in the theme song or something like that. So it's not entirely the last time, but he definitely steps back from the role and passes it on at this point. I do have a Guess Who for you, though. Like a real one.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's this guy named Billy Gilbert.
All right.
He voices Willy the Giant. Can you tell me who else he has voiced?
The Ghost of Christmas Present? Probably not. That was way too much later.
Possibly. I didn't actually look that up specifically. But it's in one of the movies previous to this.
Is it in Bambi?
No.
Then I have no idea.
He is the voice of Sneezy.
Oh.
In Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
I guess Sneezy probably has some lines, yes.
He does have a few lines, yes. The thing about Billy Gilbert is that he was a comedian, and so part of his comedy routine is that as he got really worked up and excited about something, he would kind of like get all choked up and his face would spasm and it would all kind of come out in a big sneeze. And so when Walt Disney was making Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, that comedy routine made him think immediately of Billy Gilbert for Sneezy. And then he brought him back as Willy the Giant, who, if you think about it, has kind of a similar speech pattern where he gets all kind of tangled up in his words, but instead of sneezing, he usually just comes up with a different phrase to use to sum it all up.
Yeah, I really like his performance in here as Willy the Giant. It's a very distinct and entertaining character. It's not what you expect from the giant.
Yeah, he's very, very endearing. Like, I was always with Herman, the little bug on this. it's not fair for Willy to die, which he doesn't, but yeah. But he was a really big comedian back in the day. He worked with the Three Stooges. He has a list of things that he's been in a mile long, one of which is he was in His Girl Friday as Joe Pettibone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and thanks to this movie, he can now say he's also worked with Edgar Bergen, which would have been a big deal back then.
I know, there's so many things that just don't translate now.
Mm-hmm.
But don't forget, someday we will be the Edgar Bergens of our children's life.
A grim reminder of our own mortality.
And how we will very quickly become irrelevant. Unremembered.
Well, I mean, our hit celebrities are forgotten after 15 minutes now, so it's a much faster cycle. We're much more efficient about it.
About our forgetfulness, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Precisely.
Mm-hmm. So overall, how do we feel about Fun and Fancy Free?
That you should only watch the Ludwig von Drake version of Mickey and the Beanstalk.
Save yourself some trouble. Just go find Mickey and the Beanstalk on an ancient DVD of some sort.
Yeah, I'm really sad to find out that they don't have the separate Mickey and the Beanstalk on Disney Plus, despite that being like the version that they'd released for home video before this. So you can't watch that version. You can only watch Fun and Fancy Free on Disney Plus. So overall, I feel like I probably don't need to watch this one again.
It was nice to see Jiminy again, however briefly.
It's nice to see old friends.
There's a couple sequences that are very nice. That's it. That's all I got.
I know. I feel bad. It's a tough era.
It really is. Definitely getting the package film exhaustion. But I am excited to eventually get to the adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad because I genuinely cannot remember watching those.
I've never seen them.
I quite like The Wind in the Willows as the concept, so I'm very eager to watch Disney's adaptation.
Somehow I feel like I've seen pieces of Ichabod, but I haven't seen any of Mr. Toad. So,
but that's not our next film. The next film is Melody Time, and I don't know what's in Melody Time.
Me neither.
This is a total mystery.
It is a complete melody mystery.
Somehow I think the mystery is going to be better than the reveal, but we'll see.
Until then, stay mysterious.
You know, I think this has been a really hard era because these pieces that they're including in the package films are not developed enough to be features, but not condensed enough to be good shorts. They're really talking 30 to 40 minutes of what would probably be a perfectly decent 10 to 15 minute short. And they just go on. They just go on.
And on. And it's hard when someone's just talking at you for that entire 20 minutes.
Yeah. I wish I had more to praise. Obviously, Disney still has some amazing animators and visual geniuses on their staff. And there's some excellent visuals, some excellent sequences, some excellently choreographed gags and imaginative moments. But overall, if you're watching along with us, we appreciate your dedication, but we understand if maybe you're skipping this era.
I don't understand at all.
So thanks for listening. If you enjoyed our podcast, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast player. You can write us at retroscoping@gmail.com or find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Retroscoping.
And you can join us next time for Melody Time.
We're so close. We're so close.
So close.
To getting to the end of the package film era. Cinderella is only 3 films away.
It's so good. I can't wait for Cinderella. Oh, you can do it. We can do it.
We can make it through the wilderness.
Yes, the best part about, I think, this film is that it made money so that eventually Disney could start doing real feature films again.
There's the silver lining.
Money. Money, money, money.
The silver lining is silver. Sterling silver, payable as cash.
Oh, I thought you meant like a bunch of quarters. Very nice.
All right, until next time, go
live happily ever after. Everyone loves quarters.
Used to be able to get you into a movie, and now what does it get you? Not even a stick of gum, I tell ya.